my caveat here, folks, is how do you want to paint your flowers? How are they? Are they close up? Do you just want a sort of semi-abstract? So I'm going to try and give you a. I don't think will it work this way. I'll just zoom out a little bit so you can see that. Okay. Now, sometimes with my flowers, it's just the way I work, particularly if it's going, it's in a vase of flowers. You might want to consider the composition. And what I tend to do is, we've all done this. What I used to do, I'd push my vase right in the middle, something like this, because I think it's all about the vase. It's not all about the vase, is it? It's about the flowers. So the next thing, if you were to do that, you've lost the top part of your flowers up here off the paper. So not only do you avoid placing it centrally, you sort of, it's that good old grid again. You cannot go wrong if you think about the grid. There's those 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 sections. I probably want to place my vase to the top of the vase about here, somewhere like this. You can make this vase as ornate as you like. You know, you might want to sort of give it a shape, something like that. Keep it straight, put a handle on it even. It's up to you, but push it off side. And here's another thing, off center, sorry. Here's another thing. You don't want to show the bare top of this vase, because that kills any sense of 3 dimension, any depth. You want to bring some of these shapes over this edge in front here, okay? And even down the back, somewhere behind there's something poking around the side of the vase at the back. Now, this is one reliable way of creating a good shape in a show of flowers, and that's to think about the dynamic. Imagine it like an exploding firework. That's what I tend to do in this situation anyway, is think how it pushes out. And often a popular composition for a vase of flowers is the cruciform, is that there, the cross, you know, the flowers go horizontally like this, and the vase provides the vertical. So, and then the flowers will occupy this area here. So I usually do that type of drawing, but I've also done these paintings by where I don't put any drawing down at all. I just paint non-objectively, just let things morph. Right. It's color-wise, I would say go bright, you know, really start off bright. Make any shape you like. The more abstract, the better. But I'm just going to control how much warmth to cold I want. So there's a little bit of cold, there's a bit of warmth. They're just trial shots. That's all this is. They're just trial shots. I think, yeah, it's a fairly good sort of starting point. Let's pick up some of that green that we were using on the sea a moment ago, which is like an aquatic marine green. And that might work better for areas you might want to convey round the back there. It's cooler, it's round the back. Leave a lot of white paper in these type of loose style florals. I'll go green at the top a little bit up here. It's just, I think the motto here is just fun, okay? Don't overthink it. I'll have another blue, this time cerulean blue. Very, very weak. Now this, you know, for all I said about always use strong paint, there's always an anomaly to everything. This is where I'm using a little bit of weak paint. I want the, you know, I think you've got to have some weak mixes. Clean though. They're weak, yes, but they're not sullied by their opposite numbers. They're almost pure, straight out of the tube. The only thing affecting them is water, how strong they are by the amount of water. Yeah, because flowers are delicate, aren't they? That said, it will need some dark towards the end of the painting. I'm just going to put some color. Look how abstract those marks on that vase are. One diagonal, one that barely went up and touched the top of the vase. They're only ideas, these. I like them. They're just shapes that I like to make. Um, so I think we can. So I haven't really thought about plant the flower variety. Okay, it's almost as though I'm walking through a florist, or I'm walking through the supermarket, and there's all these lovely blast of color and shapes to me. That's the pleasure I get, is just seeing them. I don't stop and think, what's the species? What variety of flowers are those? I just say, wow, they're nice, and enjoy the effect they have on me. And again, I'm pointing that out because it's the way I think we need to think as loose style watercolorists. So try not to spoil this. I do loads of these. I will have about when I'm doing these, I will have 6 pieces of paper at the ready. None of them will get more than about 30 minutes of my time. Or I put them down and pick them up an hour later, sometimes even a day later, a week later, sometimes a week later. So I'm just going to go in here now, and I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum and go very, very dark. Here's ultramarine blue, phthalo green, alizarin crimson. I'm going to stop my palette from rattling here. Okay, bear with me a second. It's better. Yeah, so that was ultramarine blue, phthalo green, bit of alizarin crimson. I'm going to try that mix for a moment. So look what I did. I took blue and 2 cold colors, the green and the blue, and I picked up some cold red. So the cold red, strictly speaking, that would be referred to as a split complementary. I don't want you overthinking this. The true complementary would have been a warm red, like cadmium red or burnt sienna. But because I'm using a cold red, that sort of makes it a split complementary. You're slightly going off piste a little bit, Right. So let's say we want a nice dark background here, and I'll need to cut negative here, make the shape by negative method. So it's this lighter area that I'm thinking about, despite the fact that I'm painting with this dark paint. It's the negative space. Did I say there was a handle there or a flower around the back? Now let's put a little bit of burnt sienna in here before it gets too dry into this area. So I picked up the burnt sienna, but I didn't go straight onto my paper. Sometimes I will. Sometimes just pick it straight up from the well here and go straight onto the paper. But other times, as now, I'll just mix it, push it into the fibers of the brush a little bit before I apply it. So I'll leave it like that. Maybe we should couple up over here, but all the time thinking, oh, I intended for a little flower head or leaf over there, didn't I, to sort of pop out. So paint around that up to this edge here, to the vase. I'm very tempted to bring this color right down into the foreground, but I'll hedge my bets. I'll leave my options open for the moment. If I'm not absolutely sure, if I haven't had that sort of spark of a thought, I don't do it, because I paint everything that nearly everything that enters my head the second it enters my head. I don't stop unless I really think, from past experience, that probably needs some extra thought before I go blasting it with more dark paint. So with a slightly weaker version of what I've just been using, I'll go in elsewhere. This is becoming more of a painting for us, and I only meant really for these to be a demonstration. So I'm just going to show you how I go about this. I'm making negative shapes up here, cutting out the main passage, shape to the floral display. And these can be, as you can probably see, quite geometrical. Some of these shapes I'm making, but all the time, it's not really about what I'm doing with this paint. It's what I'm leaving there. So let me leave that for a moment. Yeah, I think I'll go light, back to this light color here, with a little bit of warmth in it in a moment. So very weak color there, a little bit of the burnt sienna, or a little bit of the cold red in places. We'll leave a reflection maybe for the vase. Now, if that were to dry out, I would probably find myself delineating a little bit of the edge of the vase here. The vase itself, I could put a bit of more body color on there. That's just pure cerulean blue. Maybe there's an evidence of a pattern on that vase. Just put it in with my fingernail, like that. But let's get some more flowers up here. And I'm relying on alizarin crimson, a stronger hit now. And I think I'll just splatter some of this on in places. A little bit of that lovely warm Indian yellow. Indian yellow is a beautiful color. And then cleaning the brush as I'm doing, as I speak. I will work into the white paper areas and see if I can make these things look more like flowers. It's a cliche, but it really is the case. It's not what you're painting, it's how you paint it. It's self-expression. That's what allows you to produce loose work, loose style paintings. It isn't what you're painting, it's how you paint it. So I'm only using the very same techniques that I use for everything and anything I paint. Same techniques over and over, but it's how you use your brush. It's sometimes even I have to say this, it's the speed at which you work stop you from getting bogged down with unnecessary thoughts. And then I would probably finish. I'd have to define this area by once again going a little bit darker in areas, even within the shape of the flowers. Some dark areas in there. Now I've only used, I don't use it very often, but I put this paint in my palette today. It's a very expensive Daniel Smith burnt sienna, and I really don't like it. I love Daniel Smith paints. They are of extremely good quality paints, but I really do not like their burnt sienna. It's just too sticky. It's too gray even. Yeah, so folks, I am limited by the amount of time here, but I hope you've got the gist of this. Little bit of, sometimes I use a little bit of Payne's Gray, just because often these flower heads need to be, you can only go so loose. This is the thing, and I recently thinking about what I mean by this. Everything requires a modicum of its characteristic before it, otherwise it's not what it's meant to be. A tree with only 2 branches is still a tree, but a tree with no branches is never going to look like a tree. It's that sort of, that's the way of thinking about it. Anyway, I get carried away. It's very difficult sometimes for me to not complete things. So you can see, I hope, how my shape here is developing. And I would take that on and I would probably, if I'm honest, at this stage, drop this one. I would say, right, if I continue, I think I may lose the plot on this, and put it aside, do another one. But that's how I work. It's position, composition, think about your techniques, big washes, wet on dry, work wet into wet once the big washes are in place, make your big shapes, be very conscious of working in the negative. It's what you leave in here within the envelope is the all important. And your edges are your shapes. It's as simple as that. Bad edges, boring edges, too simplistic the edge, the more boring your shapes will look. Okay, so, okay. Yeah, we could do a whole day on florals and flowers easily and not paint anything the same twice. Right. Babbling brook, babbling water. Thinking about those words. Moving water, cascading water, waterfalls, stones, glisten, mosses. You could get out a handful of words and work from them. So imagine then that I've got to move. I think where I am, I'm thinking about the movement of this stream. Okay, maybe it comes from right to left a little bit. There's a slight slope on it. Place the tops of my big stones. The bigger those stones, sorry, the closer those stones are, the bigger they are, of course. So something, and this is all about design. This is all about playing with ideas of design. Let's have a little something slim that comes in from the side there. Stones back here will be smaller as we go up the Babbling Brook. There may be a bit of greenery coming in from somewhere, which could be very loose. I don't think you'd even have to put too much of a hard edge on that. It's just an inference of there being some woodland or something behind or surrounding our little Babbling Brook. Maybe the Babbling Brook goes around the side here. And this is why this is the all important thing. If you want to learn how to paint, and particularly paint in the loose style, you need to put photos away for a while. Just get rid of the photos and start inventing and creating. So we'll have another stone here. So this space here where my hand is, we could almost put a whole large moss-covered rock there, couldn't we? Or we could leave it as the water planes out as it falls through the stones, between the stones and planes out. That doesn't matter what it is, as long as it is one large shape. You don't fill this area in with more of the same size and sort of same shape shapes. Think about the break. Less texture, less busy, little bit busy, very busy, hardly any busyness at all. You can't go busy, 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 busy. Okay. Right. Now, this is one way that I work. I would first of all put in the stones. So I'm picking up burnt sienna, despite me not liking the burnt sienna that I'm using at the moment, and a bit of ultramarine blue. And I'll just loosely push in these rocks here. I'm going to put a little bit of phthalo green in some of them. It is water after all. But mostly these are going to be ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. So it'll scrape through those to show that this is a hard surface. Another one here. Probably need to get a little more water in the mix as we make this the little stones back here. Go around them, even spatter some paint on in areas. I'm lacking a bit of burnt sienna now. It's all looking a bit grey-green. Shape there, smaller shape there. That stone coming in from here. Shape with an attachment to it here. That's not warm enough because it's close. It should be warmer, more burnt sienna, in other words. Uh, it, you know, again, you don't really need to be putting the little flies that have just landed on these rocks and all the little individual fronds of moss. It's just the big shape you need. Any refinement can come afterwards, if at all it needs it. So it's talking about up here. Why don't we suggest this sunshine up here in the background? Very loose, okay? So I just used the watered down version of everything I was just using, but I've just added some lemon yellow straight from the palette. Lemon yellow in the background will tell us that behind all this, backdrop to all this, is probably a nice sunlit woodland or something like that. Simple, really, really simple. When that dries out a little bit, you could just put a few verticals in there and say, well, you know, that's the woodland, suggestion of the woodland up there. But you know what we were saying about the I think it was the, which painting was it? I think it might have been the workshop the other Tuesday, where paintings should, if you can, in the loose style, keep them looking as abstract as possible for as long as possible. This is a popular trick from me. Just take a bit of the colors that you're using, whatever those three were that you'll remember. It'll pop up again in the video. I put those colors up here with some strength. In other words, a lot more of the paint, of the three paints, and then water. Then put water on top of that strong paint. Turn your brush around, okay? Handle of the brush, and let's couple some shapes up by drawing connecting lines. More water. If it's not working, add more water. There we are. More water, much easier job. Let's put something a bit stronger in there. That's better. So, and believe it or not, the next bit after this is so easy. It's just, we've got to take the bull by the horns and use lots of paint. I urge you to watch Shirley Trevena, not just if you're intending to paint flowers, just for what she says about how important it is to use rich, strong paint. It's no good in the tube. Get it out there, use it. So I'm making a good shape then. Always thinking about the white space around the area. There's a nice puddle of wet paint here. Even some verticals back here. There's bound to be grasses and marginal plants in these areas. If there's anywhere later that you think not working, you can go over those with washes. I find myself using the card this morning a fair bit because of the rocks. It's always a good technique to apply a little bit of scraping when you're dealing with rocks and hard surfaces. Right. Probably needs a little bit more busyness of some smaller stuff back here. This is the top end of our little brook, our little babbling stream. And now it needs, I get the sense that I'm losing the viewer a little bit outwards here at the sides. So I think we've got to close that off and say we'll have a much chunkier punctuation mark here. So a little bit there for the same reason. And maybe something right into this corner about here. There, which gives us plenty of breathing area right down here, okay? Because when we get there, there's always the option to, if I can get paint out of my brush, there's always the option to spatter and do stuff like that. But I want that to register for a moment. And for the paint to go into the paper rather than as it is at the moment. It's just sat on the top of the paper. Now's not the time to start over painting it, or to paint over it. I mean, with further mixes, because there's still too much. It's still sat on the paper, not in the paper. We have to, before we can make any real shapes that will stick. The paint must be dry, or in other words, in the paper rather than on the paper. Right, so I'll have to speed dry it for the purpose of this demonstration, folks. Just take off. I'd rather leave it, to be honest, for that paint to go into the paper, but I'm going to speed dry this so I can show you the next step, and which will be the final step. Have you noticed a bit of a theme when it comes to water, painting water? It's the amount of white paper you need to preserve. Okay, at the moment that looks like a snow scene. Looks like a stream that's frozen over and been snowed upon. So note to self always, oh, if that's what I want, I know how to paint it now. It was a byproduct of learning to paint a Babbling Brook. But don't waste the opportunity. Don't waste the opportunity to learn that. It would go in my little book of notes. Right, so what I'm doing here, folks, is I'm taking the same brush again with plenty of water in it. And we must think about water's tumbling towards us through this stream, okay? And so I'm just going to keep a mostly vertical brush stroke here. And it's just here and there, I will tease down some paint off these rocks, these little boulders. Sometimes if there's a particular movement, you feel as though it looks like the water's tumbling this way over on the side, do that. Make a very gentle, slightly diagonal. If it's coming back this way here, make that directional brush mark, okay? Make that directional brush stroke. Similar here. See this? There's two rocks here, one here, and there's a gap in between. I wouldn't really expect to see the movement vertical there. I would expect to see it coming down alongside the stones, the rocks, in that direction, okay? From here, a little bit more difficult in some areas to invent that. I think that might sweep around something like this into this area here. And this is like a pool now. I think of this as a pool. But what's happening over here? If you sit next to water when it's running, you can easily pick this sort of thing up quite quickly. If you can't keep mental notes, make written notes when you're sat in these places, or if you're near these places. Even watching them on TV, there's everything you can wish to study available on the internet. So I'm coming down here. There it is. I hope that the camera shows you the subtlety of the marks I'm making. I might have to go a little bit stronger than I should, just to show you what I mean here. I'm following the movement of the water like this, just here and into that area there. And now up here, as I mentioned earlier, I knew that would be a bit of an area to deal with. It wasn't always gonna look right back there to leave it as it was. So we'll put a little bit of color up there. Maybe we should, now that we've put a bit of color there, that color should be echoed in one or two other places. Maybe through a diagonal like this, through there. So it appears here, there. There's a diagonal shape there. You could then argue, once the imagination starts going, it doesn't stop. You could then say, well, it's coming down in this direction, but what if it followed the flow of the water, this color, and it came down through here? The only thing this painting would really need now is just a couple of extra clues as to what the person is looking at, just to nail it. That's really strange. I put out a brush that I wanted to show you. Oh, there it is. A brush that I haven't used for ages. This is a sword liner brush. I used to use it a lot. One of my, I went through a phase. It was my best buddy for a while. So I'll just show you that we could just place in a couple of. This is how you tell people what if they haven't got it from this, if they haven't understood what they're looking at from this stuff here, then this will surely nail it. But if you could get away with this, I would only put this extra information in if you think it's really required or it's going to enhance the painting. Don't think, well, I've got all these tools and all of them must be used. I have all these techniques and clever ideas and they must all be used. No, that really isn't the way to think of it. It's only use them if you think it's going to enhance the painting. It's going to do something to the painting. You know, a couple of things down here, a couple of ragged lines because there'd be twigs and whatnot and debris and flotsam and jetsam or whatever you call it. Just lying randomly around the place all adds to that symbol. It's the symbol, the essence. These are the essential elements of loose style painting. Elements. You're looking for the emotion, the element, not the sort of copy of a photograph in photograph fashion. Down there now, you could almost just, there's a lovely, so much green in here. I know for a fact that a little mild lavender color, that's simply alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue, just scumbled over the foreground, a little bit up here maybe. But don't lose the white of your paper. I'm saying that to myself, literally now. Howard, don't lose the white of the paper. And then a bit of white gouache, just for good measure. Bump, 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 bump. Find my white gouache. Well, white gouache is always going to be good for this scene. I'm going to mostly spatter my white gouache. I take it straight out of the... Folks, there are many other things you could do to this painting. I didn't even mention things like spattering droplets of water, just pure, plain, clean water onto the wet paint. That always gives a really good, almost, not fern, what do you call this stuff? Moss. Gives the effect of moss in places. But just spatter. Spattering is good around tumbling water and babbling brooks because it shows the action and activity in the water and the busyness. You just spatter almost everywhere. There we are. I hope that gives you an idea of how to tackle moving water in one situation, in one example. That would, for me, be the generic example. If you can paint a couple of these, get a couple of these under your belt, I promise you, you'll be able to paint any situation where there's moving water. So I enjoyed that. That's just, is there too much water? Is there too much light? That's for another day. That's a decision to be made, not now, but for another day.
Hi, thanks for watching, and please remember to hit the subscribe button. If you want notifications, automatic notifications as and when I upload new videos, then please remember also just to hit that little bell button. And thanks for watching.